So I am Virginia Shank. I'm one of the co-chairs of the campaign along with Murray Elston, who is somewhere here. And on behalf of the campaign team, I want to introduce this man who obviously needs no introduction. Everybody, I think, here tonight already knows who Allan is, not because his picture is on every single surface of the building, but because he's worked already, I think, tirelessly for this riding. I always like to say I've worked now with Allan on a campaign and a half, but really I can't really say where the first campaign ended and this campaign has begun, because I honestly think he's just not stopped working throughout the whole time. The last 4 years, you know, he's been our voice already on Parliament Hill. It would be nice if we could all work together to make sure that he is our official voice. So, without further ado, I'm going to quickly say there's sign-up sheets for signs and volunteering. You're all here because you want this man elected. I'd like to see you all sign up for a sign and a position as a volunteer, because that's how we get him in Ottawa. So, without further ado, Allan Thompson.
Thank you, everyone. Welcome to the launch of this campaign. But as Virginia said, for those of you who have been involved, and many of you have, this sort of started 5 years ago. And there are people in this room who have continued to work, not just on my behalf, but in the interest of electing a progressive, liberal voice from Huron-Bruce. And I just want to start by thanking everyone for being here tonight. Thank you for being there 5 years ago, 4 years ago, in the last few months and weeks. And those of you who have just sort of arrived and want to get involved, that's fantastic. So thank you very much. I just want to stress that being here tonight is not your volunteer shift. So thank you very much for coming. And I do want to underline what Virginia said, that this kind of thing can only happen if we get people involved at the grassroots level in their communities. And that's how it should be. There shouldn't be people parachuted in to go out and knock on doors for you. We should have people in the community going out as a voice for this community, as a voice for the kind of movement that we are part of. So it's wonderful to see so many people here tonight that I can't see you all, so that's terrific. And I just want to remind you what it is that we're fighting for. And this is a fight. This is on. The election will begin in just a few days, and we will resume that campaign to elect a Liberal from Huron-Bruce. And why? Well, it's because our country is facing two competing visions for where we should go. And one of those visions is represented by Andrew Scheer and the Conservative Party. And from everything I have heard, what they are talking about is looking backward, going back to the Harper years, turning back the progress and some of the measures that the Trudeau government has been able to put in place. The competing vision, the one I had a chance to hear a bit of today, the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was in Grey Bruce Owen Sound, just to the north of us, spent a bit of time in Owen Sound, talking about our vision of moving forward. We have to move forward. And the new slogan for the campaign is Choose Forward, as the direction that we have to go. And that means working to continue things like the Canada Child Benefit, which has lifted 300,000 children out of poverty in this country. Thousands of them here in Huron-Bruce. Continuing with measures, progressive measures to lower taxes for the middle class. To have an actual strategy to confront what arguably is the most important issue of our time, which is climate change. That's the vision that we're fighting for. And we face a competing vision. It's almost overstating it to call it a vision that wants to look back, that will not acknowledge the challenges that we face from climate change. And I want you to think about the personalities of the leaders who are now competing to be the next Prime Minister of Canada. Think about Mr. Andrew Scheer. And in some campaigns, they say, don't even mention the name of your opponent. I think we should be reminding people who our opponent is. And this is a choice between Andrew Scheer and Justin Trudeau. And in the last few days, Mr. Scheer has been saying, oh, don't dredge up these social issues from the past. I've addressed that. Well, I'm sorry, Andy, you have not. And Canadians deserve to know what you believe, what you stand for. They don't want some legalistic explanation. Oh, don't worry about what I believe in. I won't actually do that. I'll respect the law of the land in Canada. That, in this day and age, in 2019, it is simply not good enough to even think about having a prime minister in this country who cannot stand up and just say straight up, I respect human rights, the dignity of all Canadians, to be who they are, to love who they love, to live their lives. If you cannot stand up and say that, you don't deserve to be the prime minister of this country. So that's the competing vision. And I myself believe we have to move forward with the kind of leadership, the kind of forthright leadership that Justin Trudeau provides. And say what you will about Justin Trudeau. This man is acting on his beliefs. This is somebody who is taking what he believes in and wants to do something about it. And that's doing things that benefit people. We know the problems that are out there in our society. We've made a start in the first 4 years, and now we want to continue that vision of caring about the average person and their daily needs and what can government do to make their lives better. So we need to choose forward and move forward across the country and in this community. So I want to tell you, I've been working really hard. A lot of you have been working really hard. People like Rod McDonald, my campaign manager, and Mary Ellen Ross, who's the manager of the field organization in this operation, Judy Gates, who runs this building for us, one of our campaign headquarters, and many, many others. There are people who have been working not just for months, but for years on my behalf, on your behalf, to try and elect a progressive voice from Huron-Bruce. I'm working hard, although somehow I am not losing an ounce, even though I started off in January telling you there's that song, I will walk 500 miles and I will walk 500 more. Well, I have walked 500 miles, I will tell you, and now I'm working on the next 500. But I have to tell you, I will work harder. Morning, noon, and night is the schedule. But I cannot do this alone. We cannot win this with just a candidate and a few people out going from door to door. So I'm making a really blunt, straightforward appeal to everyone in the room. If you are here tonight, and if you care enough to be here, and I appreciate your presence, I strongly encourage you to consider this to be the first of your volunteer shifts and to talk to someone and working on the campaign, visit our volunteer center in the back of the room, right beside where the food was. We should have really had you sign up before you got your food. We need to knock on doors. It's politics 101. And that's not just about gathering data and figuring out where the voters are, although that's part of it. We need to be out there in our community, talking to our neighbors, having conversations. Be yourself and reach out to your friends and your neighbors and your acquaintances and people you maybe don't even know that well. And make this pitch on my behalf, on our behalf. Why do we need to elect a Liberal member of Parliament in Huron-Bruce? So I am working hard, but I can't be everywhere. So I am asking you very directly, please be there for me. And by that I mean be there for me, but I mean be there, like over there, down that street, knocking on those doors. And for people who are a little reticent, oh, do I really want to do that? I'll tell you, this is a lot of fun. You're not like leaning hard on people, twisting their arms. You're just meeting people, saying who you are. You're in the community. You're working on my behalf. You know me. You hopefully think I would be a good member of Parliament, and you want others to share your view. And you get their answer, you write it down, and you move on to the next place. And it is remarkable what you learn about our community knocking on doors. You see incredible privilege and wealth. and you see people who are really living in abject poverty, who have incredible needs, people who are struggling with mental health issues and challenges and homelessness and lack of childcare. So we need to reach out to those people and say, you could have a voice in Ottawa. We could really try to work harder on the issues that matter to you. You meet the most remarkable people when you're out knocking on doors. So I strongly encourage you, please, in the next 6 weeks, it's a short time frame, if I could get every person in this room to go out a couple hours a week and knock on some doors, we would absolutely win this election. No question. No doubt about it. Now, there are other things that we ask people to do. We do phone banks. We do have this really neat modern system where you just have a headset and bloop, it goes and you talk. Talk to somebody on the phone and deliver your message. Reach out that way. We need people to staff these offices. And frankly, this is an expensive business. My brother helped us get a really great deal on this place, but these things do cost money. We spend a lot of money on a modern election campaign. So we ask you to consider, if you're able, to consider donating to this campaign. So I just want to leave it where I started. I really, really need your involvement, your help, even more than you have done already, for us to win this campaign. This election is so important. We thought it was pretty important 4 years ago when we had to end the Stephen Harper regime. We had to defeat that government. We cannot afford to go backwards in this country. And so we need to move forward. And I want you to repeat with me this slogan, because you should be saying it to all your friends and neighbors. And so maybe we should say it 3 times. And the slogan is, I choose forward. Does everyone want to do that? I choose forward. Louder. I choose forward. One more time. I choose forward. Thank you very much. That's the direction we're going to be moving. Thank you. And I encourage you, now that you're here, hang around, meet some others who are already working on the campaign. And actually, while I'm here, I know it's a bit warm and a little uncomfortable. If anyone had any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Happy to answer a couple questions, a few questions now, and then I'll obviously be sticking around and can answer any questions anyone has. I know somebody was posing a question out on the porch before, but I don't know where she's gone. Oh, yes, you mentioned you had a question. Please go ahead.
I'd like to go to the debate and ask Mr. Lobb why he was not in attendance with our Pride Parade for the last 3 years.
So the question was, why didn't our Member of Parliament, Mr. Lobb, attend the Pride Parades in Kincardine? There have been 3 of them. And is Fort still here? So Fort Papalia was a driving force, and this was a real watershed for a rural community. This was the first rural community in southwestern Ontario to hold a Pride event. The first. This was a national first. And Fort was a big part of that. The Prime Minister reached out, saluted Fort on social media when that happened. This has happened 3 years in a row now. I've been honored to participate in that event. And frankly, I don't know the answer to your question. I wish there was an answer, because again, as with Andrew Scheer, as the national leader, someone who wants to be the Prime Minister of this country, will not attend Pride events. And I feel the same.
All other candidates were present,
yeah.
but not Mr. Lobb.
Yeah, and I feel the same. And I won't speak for him because I don't actually know why he won't attend those events. After the Kincardine one, I bumped into him on the edge of town, 5 minutes out of Kincardine. He was touring a dairy farm, which is a really important thing to do, and I went to do it as well, after attending the Pride Parade.
So you can ask him.
So,
well, I
please.
thought probably he would say he was still in Ottawa and wasn't home yet. So obviously that's not the case.
No, he happened to be here that
day.
Yeah. Anyone else have a question? Yes, Duncan.
What's the hardest question you've had to deal with when you're going door to door?
Please state the question.
What is the hardest, most difficult question to deal with going door to door? You hear a lot of things from people. You do hear, it's interesting, a lot of people right now say they're undecided. And I think they're genuine. It used to be undecideds were polite conservatives, PCs. maybe there are some people who just don't want to say, but I do sense there are a lot of people who are genuinely undecided. And I feel very confident that once they sit down to make that decision, they will choose Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party. But those ones aren't difficult. What can be more difficult, I frankly find it difficult when you, there was a woman, I won't say her name, in a small town. I was knocking on doors, and I came to her door, and the house was pretty ramshackle. She was having to move things out of the basement up to the top floor of her trailer because her landlord told her she didn't actually have a right to use the basement, so she had to get everything upstairs. She was trying to she literally had just been sitting down with an envelope, writing on the back of it her monthly income in one column and her expenses. And she said, it's interesting, you're asking me what's on my mind. She said, cost of living for me, for a senior. And she listed it, her OAS, her CPP, her guaranteed income supplement, her GST rebate, and she had $1,755 was her fixed monthly income. And the place where she was living was in the $500–600 range, but she needs to move. She has mobility issues, wants to find a different place. This is not just about pensions. This is also about housing in our community. And I do hear from a lot of people, young and old, kind of at both ends of their lives, either starting out on their own or looking for a way to downsize and find something comfortable and affordable and practical. And I don't have an answer for folks like that.
What is your answer?
I told her, you're raising a really important question. And my commitment to her is, A, we will keep in touch. B, I will keep my ear to the ground about housing, just if I hear of someone who might have something for rent. But I'm already in touch with Adam Vaughan, who's been the parliamentary secretary on the housing file. There is a very, very progressive national housing strategy that the Trudeau government has put in place. I would like to find out more about what that is going to mean for rural communities. Is there a particular dimension to that strategy for rural? So the most difficult in a way, I think, are the people who are really struggling. They're not even complaining. It's not sort of griping. She's just saying, this is what I face, and I really wish the government could somehow help me out. So it's a complicated question with even an even more complicated series of responses, but it's really important. That's one of the dimensions that you encounter when you're out knocking on doors. Yes, Fort.
How do you deal with emotional trigger issues like racism, personal ad hominem attacks based on personality and looks?
Yep.
And how do you try to keep yourself from being drawn into an emotional state and focus on an issue?
One of the things that attracted me to Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party was this absolute, resolute determination to be positive. Positive politics. And they really mean it. When we have a briefing session for candidates, when questions come up, we are told, be positive. We are not going negative. All that's coming at us is negative, and we're not going to go there. And I think the problem when the national leadership of that political party, so these are important people who hold important positions in our governance system, when the leader of a national party engages in this kind of name-calling and in insults, personal insults in social media against your political opponent, that filters down. You know, that sets the tone for other people about what you can say about somebody who looks differently than you or that you have some grievance with. So I think we just need to set the tone from the top down that everyone has a right to be who they are in our society. And, you know, in rural communities, big changes are happening. You know, there's lots of transition in our small towns and in our rural communities. And I think, again, it's such a tribute to Kincardine. Fort and I, we were together at that parade, the first Pride Parade, assembling down at Connaught Park, and literally a little bit worried, what's going to greet us when we get up to the main street and turn right? You know, what's the reception going to be like? And I remember so vividly, we got up to that main street and turned right, and it was like a Santa Claus parade without Santa. There were hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of people there, very warm, very positive. You know, maybe some of them were just a little bit curious what this was all about, but I just thought that's a great example of how a small community like ours can make this transition and move forward. So yeah, we can't forget our past. We shouldn't forget our past, but we sure as hell shouldn't be living there. You know, we cannot go back to the past and to the way things maybe were in another time. Yes?
What I personally struggle with is climate change. And
Yep.
I'm wondering how, when someone asks us, how does the Liberal Party justify the pipeline?
Yeah.
So what do you respond to that?
I tell people, and I've had this conversation with some of the people in this room, you know, people who want to support me, that we're not all going to agree on everything. And so environment, pipelines, climate change is a really controversial file. And the Trudeau government made a controversial decision. We will go forward with a pipeline like the Trans Mountain. And I agree with that. And my view is we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can embark on this. It's a generation-long transition for us to move away from fossil fuels. Because apart from those who walked here tonight, I think everyone drove their car to be here this evening. So it's a transition. As long as we can roll the benefits of a project like that that comes to our economy, roll that back into efforts to move toward green technology, to move toward renewable energy. And that's the strategy. And I do get questions at the door, Duncan, about the carbon tax. And it's partly because, you know, people are exposed to constant propaganda. I cannot believe that a provincial government in Canada is allowed to force business owners at a gas station to put government propaganda on the gas pump. I cannot believe that that is happening. And when people ask me about the carbon tax, I say, listen, when's the last time you threw a case of beer bottles in the garbage? And I say, what are you talking about? I say, well, generations ago, we decided we will put a tax on beer bottles. We will put a deposit, 5 cents, 10 cents, on your bottle to encourage people to do the right thing for the environment. This is about sustainability. We're going to reuse those bottles 11 times. And you get the money back when you do the right thing. And I tell people that carbon tax is essentially the same thing. For 8 out of 10 people who are sort of normal, everyday users of fuel in their homes and in their vehicles, you will get more back from the carbon tax than you have paid out. And it's a simple equation. And some people won't be convinced, but I do think every economist, every credible economist has pointed to the carbon tax as the single best way to encourage people to do the right thing.
Elizabeth May says we need to double the carbon tax.
I mean, I'm hopeful in this election campaign. I think because climate change and the environment is so important, I think there will be a lot of discussion about how we could go further, what we could do. I need to educate myself on, what could we advocate? What could we do more effectively in a rural community like ours? But I am encouraged. I think there is a pretty broad consensus now in our society. Farmers know this. Look at the cracks this wide out in the field at the plowing match last week. Farmers know we're living through climate change, and we're going to have to confront it. I know everybody's probably getting warm, so if there was a burning question, I'd be quite happy to answer it. Yes, Eric.
I often hear, what do you say to people who feel the carbon tax unfairly discriminates against rural Ontario and rural Canadians?
That's a question I want to be in government corridors to ask. I want to put that question very directly to our Prime Minister and to members of our Cabinet as a Member of Parliament. But I do point out to people there are exemptions for those who live in rural communities, for those who farm. There are already built into the carbon tax ways for them to not pay as heavy a load in the carbon tax. But that's a perfect example of the kind of thing, if I am a Member of Parliament from Huron-Bruce, that is a question I would take to my own government and say, please explain to me in great detail, how is this impacting rural communities? And I have already been a thorn in the side of my own party and my own government on rural issues. The first thing I did after the last election was go to them and say, we need a commission to study how we could be more effective in rural communities, how we could reach out to rural communities and make sure that we're reaching people, we're speaking to them, we're reflecting their voice. And they said, okay, go, do it. And so we had a commission. One of our recommendations was the Prime Minister should go to the plowing match. I put a picture of a tractor in the report. Prime Minister went to the plowing match in Walton, here in Huron County. And it was the first time a Prime Minister had been to a plowing match in a decade or more. So we've been heard. This government has created a post of the Minister of Rural Economic Development. That is moving forward. The Prime Minister today in Bruce Grey was talking to people in the business community about rural broadband. So we are making progress. We have been heard on the rural file. And my commitment is, when I get to Ottawa, I will continue to be a thorn in their side on issues that affect people who live in our small towns and our rural communities. Yes?
It being a rural community, I don't know if there are more guns per person or not. I feel like the Conservatives are going to make a lot of hay about the Liberals wanting to take away your guns.
Yep.
So how does one respond to that?
Justin Trudeau has made crystal clear that his government, in the first mandate, in the second mandate, however many mandates he has, will not return to the notion of a long gun registry that existed in a previous government. They won't go there. Now the Conservatives, and this is what they're best at, is creating doubts, creating fear, creating division, taking and twisting the truth, and sort of imagining what might happen in the future and making people think this has already happened or that it's been proposed. And I tell people, just look clearly at the legislation that is there. This does not pose any undue restriction on gun owners who want to use them for recreational purposes or in their businesses or on their farms. So I think it's one of those issues that the Conservatives want to whip up. And, you know, if that's all they've got, fine. I want to move forward.
Are you accepting cash tonight?
I think the party regulation is checks and donations because they need to know the name and the address of the individual who has made a donation, which personal checks. And so we would be more than happy, Mr. McEnroy, to take a personal check right back there on the ping pong table in the back corner of the room. Yes. So again, I just want to thank everyone. I know it's getting kind of hot and steamy in here, so that's how it should be. This is a political gathering. Thank you so much for coming here tonight, and I just encourage you once again, I can't be everywhere. I need you to be there for me. Thanks.